Nintendo introduced the Wii U back in 2012 and it was met with harsh criticism.
This is Wii U.
The Switch demonstrated an alternative approach and showed an unwavering attitude to not follow the herd and sell a unique idea. Nintendo's upcoming console could be a perfection on this formula, or it could be a complete start from scratch. I've always enjoyed speculation on future consoles in these times between generations. I remember rumors about a portable PlayStation back in the early 2000s, and that got my imagination going. A Game Boy that could play PS2 discs? Obviously I was wrong with the reveal of the PSP and UMDs. With the original Nintendo Switch about to turn 7, I thought it'd be a good time to start making these sorts of speculations. Plus mine is starting to look a little greasy. A quick disclaimer, I'm just a guy who thinks about this kind of stuff while taking a shower. I have no insider info, none of my uncles work at Nintendo. So before we jump in, I want to look at the 3 routes that Nintendo could go, realistically. Number 1, make it really similar to what we have. Bump the spec sheet a little bit and have every previous Switch game be compatible with the new console. Everything feels a little heavier, a little more Apple-y, but in reality it's going to be a very similar experience. Number 2, fresh new design. Nothing is compatible, games aren't, controllers aren't, there's a completely new gimmick. Or number 3, a combination of the two. Making an educated guess, we're probably going to see option 3. Being that we just had the Switch OLED, probably not a good time to sell the same thing except a little better again. So what's going to be the new hook? 5G connectivity? The ability to browse social media on your Switch? I'm going to make a bold prediction and say they do neither of those things. Smartphones already have that covered, and Nintendo has made it clear they want to distance their device away from those devices as much as possible. Remember when the Wii had an internet browser? And remember when the Switch didn't have an internet browser? Personally, I thought that was really cool, but it takes focus away from what the device is mainly trying to sell, and that is a really good portable and at-home gaming experience. What about a folding screen like this? Well, again, the answer is probably no. If they do, games are going to have to work in this weird 4:3 aspect ratio. And if they make it backwards compatible, that's even worse, because then you already have these games that work in a 16:9 aspect ratio, and they're going to have to work in this new aspect ratio, so that's a big mess. Even though it does look cool in these like mock-ups that people have done. Well, then you might ask, what if they make it fold hamburger style? This is really cool, and we've seen a lot of Samsung screens accomplish this, but those cell phones that do this are usually really expensive, and Nintendo would have to outsource to Samsung, which they already do for their OLED screen, but that foldable screen, I feel like the manufacturing costs are just way more expensive, and it would not bode well for them if they wanted to sell this at a competitive price. So what if Nintendo did what people wanted them to do like 10 years ago? Get rid of the portability gimmick and just make a console to compete with Xbox and PlayStation with the same hardware chops and all that. You'd still have all your great first-party titles like your Marios and your Zeldas. Your third-party games would be just as good, if not better, just like the GameCube was. Yes! You would have the best version of Call of Duty or Sonic Frontiers or Hogwarts Legacy. The answer as to why this is a bad idea might be really obvious in hindsight. 1, Nintendo already tried this with the GameCube, and that wasn't really a great commercial success, at least compared to its competition. 2, this would be abandoning the portion of the market that the Switch already has, and that's people who enjoy handheld gaming. Nintendo has been the king of this market all the way back since the first Game Boy. But with the rise of smartphone gaming, that 3DS, DS experience kind of got pushed aside for smartphones, which are so convenient, so easily accessible. And that is exactly why the Switch itself is so genius, because it recaptures those 3DS, DS players and says, hey, here's an experience you can't get on a smartphone. Here's tactile buttons, here's analog sticks, here's real AAA games that you can play on the go and at home. So to answer the original question, what will the new gimmick be? As unexciting as it sounds, I don't think we're going to see a crazy new gimmick. Nintendo wants to keep that Game Boy, DS, 3DS audience, that Pokemon audience. And like I said, I could be totally wrong in a year or two once we have more information. It's true that there has been more competition coming around, like the Steam Deck and some other third-party devices that do the same thing. So if Nintendo does go this route, they need to do the one thing that they're best at, and that is first-party titles. Reworking the Zelda formula in Breath of the Wild seemed to really work for the Switch. Maybe it's time that happens for the Mario formula. Launch titles and first-party titles that's a whole nother conversation to be had, even though it is a very important conversation. I won't lie though, part of me is worried that Nintendo blew their load a little bit too much on the Switch, being that we got Smash Bros. Ultimate. You know, we're gonna have 2 Zelda games pretty soon for the Switch. There's been rumors of maybe a Mario Kart 9 coming to the Switch. Maybe that could be held out for this upcoming console. Who knows? There's always the tried and true strategy of remastering an old game that they could definitely use. Please make a Twilight Princess remaster that isn't on Wii U. Next, I sort of wanted to brainstorm the 3 big pillars of what this new console is going to be. The first pillar being the naming of it, second, the power, and third, the design. Let's start with naming. Nintendo could go down the same route that they did with the Wii to the Wii U,
Ravioli.
capitalizing on the successful name of the Switch. This is likely what will happen. A lot of people using the placeholder name Switch Pro, Switch 2. I've seen a lot of people advocating for Super Nintendo Switch, which is probably my favorite so far. Super Switch, you know, a nice alliteration, and I like the letter S because my name starts with S. If the console ends up being backwards compatible, I want to see Switch in the name. That alleviates a lot of confusion. The prefix or suffix needs to be punchy. Like Wii U, U is not a punchy suffix. Like U, I kind of like it because it sounds like 2, but it doesn't have that punchiness like Super or like Pro, 360. Sitting down and brainstorming about this makes me realize how good Sony has it and how good of a name PlayStation was, and they just stuck with it and just add a number on the end. Sony's great at naming things, except for that, like their cameras. Like Emotion Engine in the PS2. Ooh, Emotion Engine? Ooh, I love that name. And remember when we thought Xbox was good at naming stuff? Like, you know, DirectX to Xbox, Xbox to Xbox 360. And then everything after that was just awful. Super Nintendo Switch, let's make it happen. I think it's a nice callback to the roots. Nintendo's recent hardware lineup, in terms of power, is the loyal following puppy to Sony and Microsoft, always purposely lagging behind and taking detours. It's been a long time since Nintendo has led the industry in hardware specs, and I'd be surprised if that were to change. Unless the industry sees a major innovation on the level of 3D games, I see Nintendo continuing to march to the beat of their own drum. So I think it's a pretty safe bet that the Switch's successor won't be blowing anyone's socks off in terms of raw power. Interestingly, the Switch OLED dock is capable of outputting 60 frames per second at 4K resolution, while the actual console can only output 180p docked and 720p undocked. One could assume this might be hinting at a future console that is compatible with the OLED dock to see it meet its potential. Personally, I'd like to see 4K docked and see an upgraded pixel density while undocked. OLED screen, 1080p at the minimum, while being able to hit 4 to 5 hours of playtime off a full battery. One more thing, and maybe this is just me, but the Pro Controller has a very bad standby battery life. Like, I've noticed if I'm using the Pro Controller for hours on end, it's very good off a full battery, but if I don't use it for a week, you know, it always needs to be charged again. Like, the standby mode was never very good with mine. So technically not something to do with the console itself, but still add it to the wish list on the updated Pro Controller.
Here we go!
And the last category being the largest, design. Notably, one of the most eye-catching aspects of the original Switch design was the ability to pluck the console out of the dock with one hand. It was heavily shown in the advertising, and once I got one in my hands, yes, I found out it really is that easy. Truth be told, I found myself wanting to transport the console and dock rather than just the console itself, more often than not. If you don't have a carrying case made for the dock and console itself, it is the most awkward experience trying to pull the hinge that hugs the cables, unplug them, and then transport all the parts separately in a backpack. My main concern is the dock and the device mainly use gravity to connect it all. Everything feels a little flimsy once the dock leaves the safety of your living room. The dock is also a little light, and depending on the gnarliness of your HDMI cable, it can tilt the dock in a way to where it might fall over with or without the Switch in it. How about a heavier, more premium feeling dock that has a latch or lock mechanism for those who play docked and travel with their dock? As someone who primarily plays in this way, I might not be in the majority because I have so many things on my wish list that coincide with the dock itself rather than like the screen and the speakers of the Switch. That isn't to say I appreciate the upgrade on the kickstand. In the OLED model, they made it way bigger and more adjustable for more viewing angles, as well as front-facing speakers and a more advanced speaker system in general. I would hope all of these features carry forward, as well as the Bluetooth support, the headphone jack, the micro SD card slot. Please keep the game card slot and the USB-C charging port. I wouldn't be mad if they added some kind of MagSafe charging from the dock as well, maybe for faster charging. That'd be pretty sweet. The screen size on the original model was 6.2 inches, while the OLED model was 7 inches. The form factor stayed the same. They kind of just eliminated the bezels in the OLED model, which was really nice. For a comparison, the iPhone 14 Max screen size is 6.7 inches. Like what we currently have in the Switches, I don't expect any of these to be pocketable with the bulkiness. So I wouldn't be mad if we stayed at 7 inches or bumped it up by a fraction of an inch or something. Again, I'm not the biggest undocked player. Moving on to the Joy-Cons. Functionally, I've never been a big fan of the Joy-Cons sticking out, only because the sticks rubbing up against everything in a backpack and getting chafed, probably with stick drift, isn't my cup of tea. But at the end of the day, I love that they're detachable. They're fantastic if you need an extra controller or two for Mario Kart, even though the person getting them is never happy to get them. Two things I'd change though. 1. Better analog sticks. Maybe the same technology that the King Kong 2 controller uses to avoid getting stick drift, that being electromagnetic sticks. Number 2. Make the D-pad a plus. Please get rid of the 4 individual button D-pad. I don't know why the OLED model didn't correct this. Maybe it looks better in marketing pictures, but the plus D-pad is just way better for the thumb. You can rock back and forth a lot better. I'm not pushing up against nothing. Or at least if you're gonna have like nothing in the middle, make it like the PlayStation D-pad where it's all one individual piece. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look at the image on screen. There actually might be like some sort of patent on that PlayStation controller design, but I know for a fact that Nintendo does have the patent for the Plus D-pad, so just use the Plus D-pad, please. I actually bought a shell for my own left Joy-Con to correct this, to get the Plus, and it was an immediate improvement. The Joy-Cons are aesthetically and functionally great. They look great on the console. Functionally, they're great because they use the console to charge. They're not the most comfortable controllers in the world, but in terms of marketing as well, it's so recognizable and ingrained in the Switch brand that I feel like it would be in Nintendo's best interest to keep them. So that's design. Again, I'm just speculating. Maybe Nintendo won't even have a dock this time around. You'll just plug an HDMI into your Switch and lay it on your home entertainment center. I'm willing to bet against that though, because that doesn't look very good next to a TV, but it would be fewer parts. I mean, look at the Wii U. That thing needs like 7 parts to set up next to a TV, and it looks ugly as sin. So we'll see how this video fares in the upcoming years. At the end of the day, I really want backwards compatibility. I've bought way too many third-party GameCube controllers for Smash Bros. That I really don't want to have to replace. I want a more convenient way to transport the new Switch while docked. And one thing I probably can count on is good first-party titles. Please make a new Star Fox game. So that's all I had for today's time capsule. This is Shanmania. Please hit all the buttons, like and subscribe. Check out my other channel, OG Spin Dash Productions, where I do a lot of Let's Play content. Tip your waitresses, and I'll see you next time.